that. And we are off. I'll just position the video up the top there. 1 second to just get this right so the folks who are watching recording have a nice clean recording. And yes, we are good to go. So listen, you're very welcome back to session 3. I'm going to start it like I did before, but before I do, let me throw back to last week. And we started to talk. In the first week, we spoke about developing a clearer idea of where it is you want to go in 2020 and a sort of vision 5 years hence. And we spoke of it as something that was really to be inspiring, to give you a reason when you get out of bed in the morning to be really excited every morning, you know, from now on, but certainly from New Year's Eve on as you move into 2020 and beyond. And last week we started talking about how do you look at where you are right now versus that vision that you've created for yourself? Because one of the things that obviously has to happen is there has to be a process of alignment where you say, what needs to change in order for me to get closer to that vision? And last week we spoke about one part of that, which was self-awareness, becoming aware of yourself and the way you show up and the attitude you show up with and the things you say and where you pay your attention, where you pay attention day to day, where you spend your time. And one of the things we saw last week was that people spend about 47% of the time mind wandering, which the research suggests is not particularly good for your resilience, for your state of mind, and tends to encourage a more negative state of mind. And so we spoke, finally, about paying attention on purpose. And the practice that I gave you last week, which I'll refer to in a moment, was an attention practice where you brought your attention to an object. In the case of the practice, it was the breath. And you placed your attention on the breath. And then when you became distracted, you noticed you placed the attention on the breath and you brought it back again. And then when you became distracted, you brought it back again. And I said it was like being in the gym, you know, doing repetitions of your curls to build that muscle of attention. Well, there are other ways of doing that. And the other way of doing that is every day, as you go about your workday, choosing what you want to pay attention to and ensuring that where you place your attention is where you want it to be, where it makes most sense for it. So let's start with this actual session. And even though it's something I've said before, let me put it in the context of last week. If you've decided to invest an hour in this session today, and it's the best use of your time, well, why not kill all of the other distractions? Because you know from last week's session that you really only can, we as humans can really only focus on one complex task at a time. And that if you're focusing on your email plus this and other things, well, then everything is getting a small share of your attention. So if this is the most important thing for the next hour, why not give yourself the best possibility of getting a return on that hour and kill any tabs, email, phone, etc. that might distract you. And if this is not the best use of your next hour, well, why not kill this and focus on whatever is the best use, because the recording will be there for you to come back to when you're able to give it your full attention. So here ends the sermon. A lot of what we try to teach on these programs is about being intentional about where we pay attention, deciding where we want to be mentally, because that has a big impact on our results and so on. Again, to the folks who are watching on a recording, let me suggest if you want to get the most out of this session, it's not going to be by passively listening. Particularly in this session, we have 2 or 3 practices. And what I want to do is have you experience a sense of gratitude, which is something that we're bringing up more strongly in this session today. And you won't experience it by listening passively to the exercises and imagining what it would be like to interact. So what I suggest to you is, again, as if you were here, you know, shut yourself off from any distractions and just engage with the exercises as we work through them. So we started from a place where we said, all we want to do really is create a process where by the time the fireworks go off and the gong drops in New York and so on, that we have done some reflection on where do I want to be in 2020 and where do I want to be in 2020 and beyond. So that having set a vision, and one of the things I left you with last week was the idea that awareness is curative, that just being aware of having a vision already starts subtly moving you in that direction. But to create a vision of where you want to go in the future, and then to start the process of thinking, how do I align today with that future place? What changes do I need to make in myself and my circumstances? And how do I build the resilience to stay on the path when the inevitable challenges come along? So that's what the program was about. And last week we got to the point, having in the first week looked at the whole visioning side of things, we got to the point where we were talking about how do we align that future vision with the current self and the current circumstances. And we said there were two areas that we need to look at. We need to become more aware of internally what's going on inside of us, the attitudes, the thoughts that we bring to our lives, and where we pay attention. You know, what it is we give our attention to, because in a very real sense, and it's been paraphrased so many times, what we think about, we become. So where we pay attention is really, really important. And then we spoke about external self-awareness. And last week, I gave you a practice that's based on classic mindfulness breath attention, which is designed to build that muscle of attention, simply through focusing on the breath, noticing when you've lost attention, bringing the attention back to the breath, noticing when you've lost attention, and building that ability, that meta-awareness, to notice when you're not paying attention to what you set the intention to pay attention to. And so building that muscle of attention. And we went through one of those practices last week, and I sent you a recording so that you could continue that practice. The thought I left you with was that we have covered the sort of internal self-awareness, and that simple mindfulness exercise is enough to start exercising that internal self-awareness. But that, as Boyatsa said in his latest book, that not having a view of how other people see us show up it leaves the picture of who we are and where we're going kind of incomplete. And that's more or less where I left it. I said that if you want to start looking as we move forward at how are you showing up to people, and how are you landing on people, and how they experience you, and what do they experience as you in the way you show up, that you could do an awful lot worse than completing the assessment. And many of you did during the week, and I'm going to talk about what you do with that at this point. We'll be putting it into your hands over the next 24 hours. So the assignment last time, I said to you at the time, you know, imagine that we come to today, which is what? It's November 20th. And I said, imagine our vision that you're on November 20th, the vision that you have for the future is starting to come together, that you've started to build your sense of that ability of being able to pay attention. And to start building that, I said, start acting intentionally. And so set up a daily intention whereby, and let me just get my coin on front of me. Oh, there it is in my pocket. I said that, you know, that each day as you move into the day, set some kind of intention for that day. And I suggested something like, today, I intend to move towards greater clarity on my personal vision. And I spoke about the idea of using the cue, the physical cue of the coin, and getting either a foreign coin or something else that you put in your pocket that gives you that reminder morning and evening. The other thing I suggested was to continue journaling on the personal vision until you get to a stage where you feel, yeah, I pretty much clarity on that. Now, I would suggest it's a journey anyway, and that's something you need to return to on a regular basis. But at this stage, if you have managed to engage with the exercise and you have managed to work with the vision prompts from the app, I think you'll start to be seeing some clearer picture of what that future self and that future vision looks like. And the other thing I said was give yourself the gift of just doing that attention practice. Now, I'm not going to pause time-wise. I'm not going to pause just to take your feedback as I normally would. But let me ask you as I intro and I move on to the next session, just do me a favor, put one or two lines into the chat just to share. You can share it with everybody, or you can share it just with the presenters, with myself and Aoife. Did you get a chance to do any of that? And if so, what did you get a chance to look at? So just a line or two. I'm just curious whether you managed to get that built into your everyday. And I'll come back to those comments at the back end of the session, because we have there's a lot I want to share with you today. And I was going to kind of slice some pieces out to make it more comfortably fit the time scale. But there are a couple of things in here that I really want you to have by the end of this session. So please pop any of those comments in, just one or two lines. Yeah, I got this done, I got that done. And we'll pop back to that at the end of the session. So here's what the program looked like. I said on day one, this is what you signed up for. We start working on creating a compelling vision. enhancing your focus and self-awareness so that you could figure out where am I versus that future vision, and then build the resilience to stay on track. The expression I used last week, one of my favorites, a little bit corny, but there you go, was man plans and God laughs. Because as sure as shooting, you just know that the moment you make a plan and set a vision, the wheels are going to come off and something's going to go wrong. And it's having the resilience to stay on track, having the mental toughness to be able to stay focused on things even when things go wrong is a critical part of this process, and it's one that's often forgotten. So that's what we're going to focus on today. So here's what we're going to cover today. First thing, I have said to you in the last two sessions, don't trust me, don't take my word for anything I say, dive into the research. I do not share anything in these sessions unless I have found good, compelling research from credible sources that says what I'm sharing works. So the only practices I share are practices where there has been sufficient research to show they work, and the research has to be by credible sources. So today, we're going to look at building resilience using gratitude as the basis of it. Now, there are lots of ways to build resilience. If you signed up to our Mindful Leader program, and several of you did, well, then you'll know that there's lots of mindfulness techniques for building resilience. Today, we're going to focus, because it's very much part of this program, on gratitude as a way of building resilience. And what you're going to see is there is oodles of research, which is a lot of research on showing the efficacy of gratitude in building resilience, building stress resistance, building the ability to stay on track when things go wrong. And I'm going to share with you 3 specific practices. The first one is brand new. This is one you haven't done before, because some people like to have a formal practice that they can sit down to, schedule into their calendar a couple of times a week. And this is a really lovely practice that's adopted from one that was developed by a lady in Berkeley University in the United States. And we'll get into that in just a moment. And when you're fresh from that, and I'm going to ask you please to engage with that practice. When you're fresh from that, then we're going to dive into a quick 3 minutes of journaling using the approach we used before on gratitude, because I want to just get you journaling on gratitude while you're in that place from that gratitude practice of really having dived deeply and marinated yourself in anything for which you need to feel grateful. And then the third one I'm going to share with you is a practice based around self-compassion and learning to give yourself a break, and learning to give yourself the same sort of break that you would give somebody else if they stumbled or had an issue or had a problem in some situation. So when we get to that, it'll be self-explanatory what that's all about. But I want to share with you today 3 specific practices that you can take away, that if you build them into your everyday, and it's just a couple of minutes, can really dramatically impact your motivation level and your resilience level. And I'm going to show you the research for that. And then finally, I'm going to finish by telling you that within 24 hours, we're going to put into your hands your report and something called the Development Tips Workbook, and a recording so that you can work through that and figure out, how do I start getting the way I show up to others aligned with the way I want to show up to others in order to realize the vision that I've set for myself. So you can see why I'm moving at a pace. We have a fairly full agenda for an hour, and I'm very conscious of just watching my clock here as we talk to make sure that I give you the max. So what we're going to do first off is just look really quickly at the research on building resilience. And you know, last night I was just as I was going to bed, something binged up on my telephone, and it was something that came from one of the sources I use all the time, Berkeley University, with even fresher and newer research on gratitude, which I'll share with you in the follow-up. But let me share with you 1 or 2 pieces of research that just tell you all you need to know in order to be convinced this is worth a few hours a day. So there's a lot of research coming out all the time. And as I say, there was a really fresh article last night. I wasn't motivated at 20 past 11 last night to get in and start changing the slides. So I'm going to share that link with you. First off, let me define for you, what do we mean when we talk about resilience? Sharon Begley, who's the source of this quote, is a researcher with a guy called Rich Fernandez. No, I beg your pardon. Richie Davidson, who is a neuroscience researcher who's done an awful lot of the research on resilience and mindfulness and emotional intelligence and the effects that it has on the brain. And I love her definition. She says, resilience is the ability to gain your emotional balance after a setback rather than wallowing in anger, anxiety, depression, or other negative emotions. And so when things go wrong, that they go wrong, but you bounce back. So the purpose of today's session is to start building that sense of resilience, the ability to bounce back and not to get lost as it is, and it's normal to at times get lost in anxiety, anger, or depression, or other negative emotions when things go wrong. So the research, 4 days ago, I had somebody brought my attention to this article. And when I originally designed this session, I had built it around another big chunk of research that I'll share with you in a moment, but not in detail. And I had built 3 or 4 slides around that other research. And then somebody brought my attention to this article. I just thought, no, I have to change what I'm sharing with you because I just loved the way this author had gone to 6 or 7 different sources and pulled together everything that I'd really like to say to you about the usefulness of gratitude in your everyday life. I'm going to share this article with you or a link to it, but I want to tell you what's in there. First thing he says is, here are the things that gratitude is good for. And what I really like about, so he said, you know, these are all things you care about and I care about. Makes you more likely to exercise, reduces your stress level, improves the quality of sleep, increases your emotional well-being, makes your heart stronger and healthier, and makes you a more effective leader. They sound like huge claims for something as simple as gratitude. What's really nice about what this author has done, I'm just moving the video out of the way for the people I'm recording, is that you'll notice, see those blue links? Those are links to really credible organizations who have done really credible research that say that these are the outcomes of a steady, reliable gratitude practice. So there's no fluff in there. There's no Cosmopolitan magazine's research on resilience and stress. You've got people like the Journal of Psychosomatic Research, Massachusetts General Hospital, Wharton Review, the National Center in the United States for Biotechnology Information, and so on. So you've got this really deep research on gratitude. Last 5 or 6 years, it has exploded. Bottom line, if you can figure out how to find a sense of gratitude in your life, it impacts a huge amount of things, including the one that we're talking about today, which is that sense of resilience, that sense of being able to bounce back. That article we'll share with you when we follow up with you. This is the 70-page white paper from the Greater Good Science Center in Berkeley University in the United States that really dives deeply into that science. And I summarized that in 3 or 4 slides, which I'm not sharing with you today because I replaced it with the other stuff. When I share the copy of the slides with you, I'll make sure that you can actually see those. And we'll share this document with you as well. So bottom line is, be convinced. There is a lot of research out there says this thing or this stuff works. Read it afterwards so that you have that motivation to know that what you're doing in building these practices is going to have some positive effect on you. So there we've touched upon the research on gratitude. So let's knock that off the list. And let's move on to what we're going to do next. So what I want to share with you now is a gratitude practice. And I'm going to ask you, as we go through this, it takes about 8 or 10 minutes. Please engage with it. Now, if you're in an office environment and it's not practical, for example, to close your eyes, because it's going to look strange in that office environment, that's okay. I'll invite you to allow your eyes, just like with last week's session, to allow your eyes to drop down, to a meter or 1.5 meters in front of you, and then just to work through the exercise. Work through the exercise, I beg your pardon, with me. Now, if it's not practical, close your eyes. You can just keep them open. Just keep them comfortably open. Don't, please, if you want to get the max out of this, engage with the exercise as opposed to spectating. So just like last week with the practice, what I invite you to do now is just to sit in a kind of an upright position, comfortable upright position where you feel, supported. Your back, your head, and your neck are straight, but not stiff, not military. but that attentive, if you want to call it that. Put your feet flat on the ground, put your hands perhaps on your lap or somewhere that they're comfortable for you, that they're not going to distract you. And if it suits you, allow your eyes either to close or just to fall down with a soft focus, to focus maybe a meter or two in front of you on the ground. And just allowing that focus to fall. And now just taking 3 slow, deep breaths where you try to make the out breath a little longer than the in breath. And just as you're breathing in, noticing the breath in the belly as the belly rises on the in breath. And paying attention to the breath as the belly falls on the out breath. So just taking 3 slow, comfortable, not overly strained breaths where you're just paying attention and noticing the breath going in and out and allowing yourself just to settle in on the breath. Just allowing yourself to settle a little bit more into a kind of a more peaceful, more centered way of being now. So let's take 30 or 40 seconds just to mentally scan your body up and down for any areas where you notice any tension or tightness or soreness. You know, so your shoulders held high, your jaw clenched, your fists clenched, anywhere where you feel it. And anywhere where you feel that sort of tension or tightness, imagine that you can breathe your warm oxygen-filled breath into those areas of tightness. Imagine that you're breathing, and as you're breathing, it's going into those areas. And then on the out breath, just let the tension or the tightness release. Just breathe it out. So just sticking with that for a moment, just scanning the body for anywhere there's tightness or tenseness, and consciously breathing into it, and on the out breath, letting it go. And it can help to say to yourself, let it all go. And just doing that for maybe 10 or 15 seconds. Now, we are emotional creatures. So coming into this session, you'll have carried in maybe worries, fear, anger, irritation, jealousy, judgment, lots of different emotions. Just see if you can become aware of any emotions that you brought into the session. Where you notice anything like that, any sense of fear or anger, irritation, worry, etc., just see again, can you breathe into those emotions, imagining that you're breathing into them, noticing them, and allowing them just to do their thing as you breathe into them. And as you breathe out, just release them if they choose to be released. So just breathing into any sense of emotion that you feel and allowing it, just letting go. And if they choose not to go away, don't worry about it. Don't push them away. Just notice them and let them be, just for a few seconds, breathing into any emotions that you notice hanging around. And now just notice, are there any thought processes going on? It's likely there's some kind of internal dialogue going on. Maybe you're thinking or planning what you're going to do next or what you're doing before, and that's okay. It's perfectly normal. That's what you do day long. You're continually thinking. You're never without thoughts. But just for the purpose of this session, as you notice those thoughts, you notice what you're thinking into. Again, just imagine that you can breathe into them. And as you breathe out, allowing the thoughts to flow out into the background with the breath. So breathing into the thoughts and noticing them, not pushing them away, but allowing them just to fade into the background if they choose to do so. Just doing that for a few seconds. So now that our bodies and our emotions and our thoughts are maybe a little quieter, a little clearer, things are a bit more spacious and open, we can start to focus on any events or experiences, people's pets or possessions for which we feel grateful. So first, even the fact that you're listening to this recording means that you already have several marvelous blessings. There's the gift of life itself, the most precious gift we all have. Someone gave birth to you, somebody fed you as an infant, changed your diapers, clothed you, bathed you, taught you to speak and understand. Somebody educated you so that you find yourself here today engaging with this practice. That's something to be grateful for. There's the gift of hearing, so you can easily hear and learn. Whether you're hearing the song of a bird or the notes of a band or an orchestra, the sounds of singing and voices, or the sound of your own breath flowing in and out. Just that simple thing of being able to hear all that's going on around us is something to be grateful for. And then there's the gift of a heartbeat, moment after moment, just pumping fresh, life-giving blood to all of your organs. So just noticing that there's so much that we take normally for granted that really is, or really are, precious gifts for which we should be grateful. So now let's think about those things that we have today that make our lives easier, and certainly easier than they are for many people in many parts of the developing world. We flip a switch and light appears. Be grateful. We turn a tap and clean, drinkable water flows. Be grateful. We adjust the thermostat and a room grows warmer or cooler. Something to be grateful for. We have a roof to keep us dry when it rains and to keep the sun off us when it's just too hot. We have walls to keep out the cold wind, windows to let in light, screens to keep out insects. We have a lot to be grateful for. We enter a vehicle and it takes us where we want to go. Gratitude. We've clothes to wear and machines that wash them for us. We have appliances that store our food at the right temperature and help us cook it without ever having to gather wood or light a fire. We've indoor plumbing. We've public libraries and thousands of books and recordings free for anybody to borrow and read. We've public schools that can teach us to read and write, skills that are still only available to a minority of the world's inhabitants. See if you can cultivate a gratitude for these simple things that are so normal for us. When we consider the everyday blessings we often take for granted, we realize just how much we have to be grateful for. So just taking a moment to notice just how lucky we are and to be grateful for that. Now, consider the people who enrich your life. Those people who smile at you and cheer you on. Your family, your friends, your acquaintances, colleagues who support you when you need a shoulder to cry on or a hand to guide or support you. Those people you know are there for you. Let their faces flood your mind over the next few seconds. Tune into the sense of gratitude that you have people like this around you. People who are there for you, even when you're not thinking about them. And now let's take a moment just to reflect any particular reasons you have for feeling grateful in this moment. Call to mind anything and everything you have to be personally grateful for, however small those things might seem. It could be as simple as, I made my bus this morning, or my dog was excited when I walked into the room. I did a good job. I got feedback from my boss. Anything that was a positive thing that happens, bring a sense of gratitude to it. So start to build a habit of noticing even the smallest things in your life that make a difference. They don't have to be majorly life-changing. Anything for which we deserve to be grateful. So just see, as you're sitting here, having brought so much to mind, if you can allow yourself over the next few seconds to really feel that sense of gratitude in your mind and your body, just to see, what does it feel like? Letting it fill up your heart and mind, and let it enhance your mood and your energy. And now, as we get closer to the end of the session, bring a simple intention. Allow this to echo in your mind. I'm going to make it normal for me to notice those things that deserve my gratitude and visit with them at least daily. And when I ring the chime in a moment, just to finish the practice, see if you can take out of the practice with you, with attention and intention, that sense of gratitude. You can draw on the strength of that sense of gratitude anytime you wish to raise your mood or your energy, or give you the boost you need in challenging situations. So just before I ring the chime and finish this session, just see if you can notice in your body and your mind, how does it feel to have that sense of gratitude? When the bell rings, just stretch, open your eyes, and just bring yourself back to the session. So that session, which lasted in all there about 11 minutes or 11 and a half minutes, that session is a more formal practice that, if you bring it into your everyday, once or twice or 3 times a week, or every day if you wish, it just makes you come and realize just how much there is, even in the toughest times when things are going badly, how much there is to be grateful for. And that sense of gratitude has an impact, not just on the way you feel in the moment, but has a longer term impact on the functioning of your brain. And as I said, you'll read in that research that one of the things that it builds is a tremendous resistance to stress and a tremendous capability to deal with stress more effectively. So while you're still in that sort of place, what I'm going to do is just try and tune you in just to a very quick 3-minute journaling on gratitude, because I just want to connect these two practices together. And while you've got that sense going on inside you, where you're in that place of gratitude, grab a pen and paper, okay? And as before, write down the prompt I'm going to give you. And then when you write down the prompt, I'll tell you you've got 3 minutes, and just put your pen to paper and keep the pen moving, continuing for where the prompt ends. Don't worry about structure or grammar or punctuation. Just keep the pen moving. And if you run out of something to write, you can write the prompt all over again, or you can write, I can't think of anything to write, until you do. So here's the prompt. The biggest source of gratitude in my life is, and write it down, because, and start from the because. So the biggest source of gratitude in my life is. So I'm going to give you just 3 minutes just on that, and just keep the pen moving on the paper. So let me start that. So just start that moving now. And please don't spectate. See if you just engage with this and allow what came out in that practice to flow onto the paper. So please, 3 minutes. I'll go quiet. Just keeping the pen moving, not thinking about it, just allowing it to flow out. What is the biggest sense of gratitude in your life? About halfway now. If you run dry on ideas, just rewrite the prompt. The biggest source of gratitude in my life is because. Really feel it. And that's it. So just stop. And what I'm going to suggest to you is I'm going to move on through. As I'm doing that, do me a favor, if you feel inclined to. You can share it with all panelists and all attendees or just the panelists. Just be curious if you're prepared to share it. You know, what is it that is the biggest source of gratitude? And it doesn't have to be an essay, just anything that you care to share. Just be curious and see if it triggered into that. So one of the reasons that we created the app was to keep the business of journaling, the practice of journaling interesting. And if you've dived into the app at all, you know there's a section in there called gratitude. And it has a series of different prompts that are designed to get you thinking, you know, and spark your awareness of all the things in your life that you have to be grateful for. So if you haven't tried that yet, it's really well worth diving into that, because every time you revisit this, you build that muscle of, first off, self-awareness, because just bringing attention to what you have to be grateful for is building your self-awareness. But that sense of gratitude also starts to, as I say, enhance your motivation and enhance your resilience. So really, really worth tuning into that. And I'll make some suggestions at the end of this. One of the things that helps with that, again, I put it out of my hand, here it is any sort of a coin. And if you're on the session for the first time and you haven't had a chance to look at sessions 1 and 2, if you go into, I think it's session 2, you'll see me talking about using a physical cue to remind you morning and evening, to bring your awareness, your mindfulness morning and evening to what am I intending to show up as today, and what am I grateful for. And that can help you, you know, to remember. It's a simple mechanism, and I'm getting great feedback, thank you, from folks on the efficacy of that. Now, I'm going to move along. So we're moving at quite a clip, because there's one other practice I want to share with you before we talk about kind of next steps. And that is something on self-compassion. And again, in previous programs, if you want to join our Mindful Leader program, there's no cost for it whatsoever. Let AIFA know if you haven't already signed up. And we do lots of different techniques for building resilience. I'm giving you a selection of ones that are not featured as strongly in those programs. And one of them is self-compassion. And the reality for you and me and everybody else, on every other human on this planet, is we have this voice in our head, this inner critic, that is continually picking us up on the shortcomings that it perceives in everything we do. And putting it briefly, we say things to ourselves inside our own heads that we would not allow other people to say to us. We say things to ourselves about ourselves that we would never dream of saying to somebody else, because they're quite so unkind. And when I show this cartoon up, it always, in a live session, it always gets a little ripple of laughter. And the reason it gets a ripple of laughter is because people realize, yeah, that is so much part of the human condition. It is so normal for us to criticize ourselves and to be on our cases all the time. So you have this voice all the time going on every time you trip, every time you have an issue, every time you have a problem, telling you that it's unacceptable, that you're a failure, that that you're not worthy, and so on. And we all have that voice going on. Well, this lady here, Kristen Neff, she's a researcher, and her speciality is in the area of self-compassion. And self-compassion, by her definition, is simply acting towards yourself with the same kindness and compassion that you would act towards somebody else. So it's so rare that we bring to ourselves the same level of compassion we bring to somebody that we love, that her research looked at what happens when we do that. And I'll share some of that research in a moment, but it's really, really powerful. So let me be clear. This is not about self-pity. And nobody wants to be self-pitying. Nobody wants to be seen to be self-pitying. It's not about, oh, poor me, it didn't work out. That's not self-compassion. Self-compassion is about moving from self-judgment, judging ourselves in a way we wouldn't judge other people, I should say, towards a greater sense of self-kindness. Okay, so instead of being continually on our case, cultivating that attitude of mind that we would bring to somebody that we love, that level of kindness if they stumbled that they had an issue. It's getting away from this sense that only I suffer from this, only I feel this way, only I fail in this way, I'm the only person in the world that feels as badly as this, into a sense of everybody feels this way sometimes. And Neff talks about something that she refers to as the sense of common humanity, recognizing that the way you feel is the way everybody feels. And tuning into that really, really is helpful. And then finally, going from identifying with our feelings to simply noticing our feelings. And it's unfortunate in our language that we will say, I am stressed, I am angry, I am sad, I am anxious, instead of saying, there's a physiological sensation of sadness in my body. I'm feeling sad. There's sadness in me. There is anxiety in me. There is anger in me. We over-identify with them. So self-compassion, a third dimension, is bringing mindfulness to what we feel, but not becoming it. So when there's anger in us, noticing there's anger, but not necessarily describing ourselves as anger. When we fail at something, not describing ourselves as a failure, not over-identifying. Now, you would think that it would be normal for somebody like you, who is a compassionate person, who brings love and care to the people that you care for, to bring that care to yourself. The mistaken belief that most people have is if I give myself an easy ride, if I'm compassionate with myself, well, then I'm going to lose that motivation to change. And it is mistaken. All of the research says when you bring self-compassion to yourself, when you are compassionate to yourself in times of difficulty, that you get much greater levels of motivation and much greater levels of resilience. Now, the research on this, and it's been going on since about 2004, 2005, is very deep and very, very clear. People who bring compassion to themselves, who bring to themselves the same attitude they would bring to a loved one in times of difficulty, have higher drive and higher motivation, lower anxiety, and less need to find themselves suppressing difficult or negative thoughts. So the key thing to take away from this is self-compassion is a positive act. So how do you do that? Well, I'm going to share with you Kristen Neff's, she calls it self-compassion break. And it's for those situations where you're feeling a little bit challenged, where you're under stress. And it's just a 2 or 3 minute intervention you can do anytime that you feel that. And I'm going to share with you, and I ask you, please work along with it. Don't just listen to it, work along with it. Now, let me see, how are we for time? We're pretty good. So I want you just for a moment, take 30, 40 seconds and think of a situation in your life that's difficult, that's causing you stress. And just over the next 30 seconds, I'm going to time it so that I keep it on track. Over the next 30 seconds, see if you can actually feel what that stress and that emotional discomfort feels like in your body. I'm going to go quiet. Tune into something that right now you're aware is causing you stress, and see if you can feel the manifestation of it. I'm going quiet. More. And most importantly, see if you can get out of your head and notice, what does it feel like? What does this discomfort feel like in the body? And when you do, once you've captured that sense, and next time that you feel that sense of stress in your body, say to yourself first, this is a moment of suffering. Now, if you don't like that language, well, this is stress. It's just acknowledging it exists. It's just noticing that it's there, or ouch, or this hurts. And then the second thing is, one is this is a moment of stress, or this is stress. The second one is this is normal. It's okay to feel this way. Suffering is a part of life. It's okay to feel stressed. Other people feel this way, or I'm not alone. This is not unusual. I'm not unique. Everybody struggles in their lives. So in the first one, noticing the stress, you're just bringing mindfulness to it. You're acknowledging it. And as soon as you acknowledge it, the research suggests that it starts somewhat to dissipate. So just, ooh, there's a sense of stress. Secondly, it's okay to feel this way. It's normal. Other people feel this way all the time. I'm going to feel this way. I've felt this way before. I'm going to feel this way again. And then, and please go with me on this. It may seem strange and it may seem a little bit woo-woo, but I'm going to ask you to put your hands on your heart. I'll explain why in a moment. But put your hands on your heart and just see if you can tune in for a moment to the sensation of those hands over your heart and the warmth and the touch, and just see if you can bring attention to it. And as you do that, just say to yourself, may I be kind to myself in this moment. May I be as compassionate with myself as I would be with somebody else. And that's the intervention. I'm going to send you the instructions for this and a link to it. But it's simply, next time you feel that sense of stress, wow, there's stress. There's stress in me. That's okay to feel this way. It's quite normal to feel this way. Lots of people feel this way. I've felt this way before. I'll feel this way again. And then with your hands over your chest, may I be kind to myself in this moment. Putting your hands over your chest is not just some kind of woo-woo spiritual psychobabble. The moment you touch and you put your hands to your heart, you trigger a release of oxytocin in your brain. It's the bonding hormone that bonds you to other people when you touch, bonds you to the ones that you love, bonded to your mama in the first moments of your life when she held you. And when you put that on, you trigger that release of oxytocin. And that sense of that oxytocin makes you more inclined to bring that kindness to yourself. So anytime you put your hand to your heart, you're bringing this to heart, and you're causing, as I say, a chemical reaction in the brain. And it's as simple as that. I'm going to give you a link to this practice. This takes seconds. I mean, here it is in real time. Whew, I'm feeling stressed. It's okay. It's normal to feel stressed. May I be kind to myself in this moment. That's how fast it goes. It doesn't have to be a big palaver. It doesn't have to be a big production. But all of the research says that it works. It changes where you are. It shifts your perspective. Now, if you care to do so, again, I just invite you, and I'll come to it at the end. What did you notice? What did you notice as a result of that compassion practice? And we've about 7 minutes left in the session. If I don't get to do it before you leave, I'll carry on just so that you get it on the recording. Because what I want to just see is how many of you felt that kind of just slight shift. So anything, a one-liner is more than sufficient. So there, we've looked at self-compassion. And I love what Kristen Neff says here. She says, it means acknowledging that we're imperfect, doing the best we can, and trying to be kind to ourselves in the process. That's what you do for loved ones. You acknowledge that they're imperfect human beings, doing the best they can, and you're kind to them in the process. Why not to yourself? So where are we right now? Well, we've covered the 3 practices. I'll talk to you about how you should integrate those and how you should use them. And we're actually in pretty good shape, because we're now at a point where I want to talk to you about what do you do next with that assessment. And we'll tie a bow around all this at the end of the session. So let's start to build on your existing strengths and see what are the areas that could be that you could adapt in the way you show up to people. Last week, we started looking at internal self-awareness. And then I left you with this thought from Boyatzis that said, without accurately reading how we're perceived by others, our view of the real self is incomplete. And many of you completed the assessment during the week. You'll have that assessment in your hands in the next 24 hours of the report. And that'll give you a sense of how are you showing up in the world? How do other people experience you? You'll have selected people who know you, and who probably people who care for you, but certainly people who are important to you. And you'll be looking at how you show up in the world. So we send you that report. It's very specific to you. Nobody else sees it. But I'm also going to send you a link to a recording because we didn't want to spend time online during this session talking through the report. That will walk you step by step through a process that will help you identify one or two things that will help you align more fully with your vision. So what I'd be saying to you is when we send you this link, please go and watch that recording with the report in hand and try to resist before you watch the recording going through the report. Because I guarantee you, your eye is going to go to anything you perceive as being negative, and there's an awful lot more in there that's really worth paying attention to than just the negative stuff. What I'm going to walk you through in that session is how do you identify one or two behaviors that you could easily change and you feel motivated to change that would more effectively align you with the vision that you have for the future. So that's been quite a heavy session, and I say heavy, it hasn't been heavy, but there's been an awful lot in it. Here's what I want you to imagine for December 4th. Imagine you come onto this last session on December 4th, and you have a clarity of, here's the vision that I see from some of your comments has already started to form and started to become real. And you have a sense that, wow, I've started to build some awareness of myself. I've started to change the way I show up. I'm showing up more intentionally. And I have a greater idea of how I'm landing on people and how I want to adapt that to greater align myself with that future vision. In order to stay on track for a vision like that, what you just need to do is, one, make sure before we meet on December 4th that you work through the report and just select one or two areas max that you work on. And again, use the coin just to remind you at the beginning of the day to pay attention to any opportunities that arise for pursuing that different way of showing up. This is something that with me happens in 20 seconds. You don't get up and think, through in detail, here are the things I want to change today. You just think, I'm going to show up in the way I committed to myself. I'm going to show up to be more aligned with the vision I have for the future. That's it. And that little mechanism helps you keep on track. Why not try one or both of these new practices? Personally, I find the formal practice really, really good. If you can get that in a couple of times a week, just to remind yourself just how darn lucky you are, even when you're unlucky, how there's always something going on there. And if you can, why not put both in? The self-compassion practice or the gratitude practice. And my biggest suggestion to you is that try and find, if you're going to do formal practices, don't wait for the perfect time to come along. Sit down with your diary and say, where can I grab a 10-minute slot that I invest in myself over the next few months? And you could cycle through the attention practice from last week, one day, the gratitude practice the next day, the self-compassion practice the next day, and so on and so forth. And just cycle through those. And that 10-minute investment, watch what happens after as little as 20 or 30 days. And then if you want to, and if you're traveling, you're on a plane, you're on a train, maybe not in an automobile, why not just grab a pen and paper, get out the app, and journal on gratitude. Start to see if you can experiment in your life with the impact of journaling. So we're at 9:59, which gives me 1 minute. Let me tell you what we're going to do next time. We are lifting off next time. Next time is the last session. That's where we launch into the process of getting ready for what we started out to do, which is to be ready for 2020. And if you have questions and answers on your report, we'll deal with those. And any sort of questions or comments on the program. I'm going to talk next time about being more intentional as you move out with this stuff. How do you bring it back into the world so it doesn't fade after these sessions are over? And so we'll talk about some thoughts and ideas on maintaining the momentum. So that's where we are right now. And I am conscious of the fact that I committed to you that these sessions would be an hour long. I'm going to end 30 seconds ahead of the hour. And I'm going to ask Aoife to share with me, any of the questions, any of the comments that came up. And I'm going to continue with those until they're finished. If you have to run away back into your life because you've made commitments, go for it. We'll come back to the recording because I did notice some of the comments going by and I was quite touched by some of them. So Aoife, questions, comments, shares, etc.?
Yeah, thank you, Deiric. We actually did get a few questions that I think, given what we're going to cover next in the next session, I'll hold those. It was around, do you have some suggestions for making sure that you're setting reminders for yourself to implement this into your daily life? So I'm going to hold on those because I know you're going to dive into those next week.
Yes, yeah, indeed.
Okay, so would you like me to cover some of the comments first from the
Maybe just
session?
a couple of the quick comments, in response to, I said, give me some feedback and anything that people had.
Perfect. Okay, so we did have some folks share that even within a week, having a specific intention for the day has been really powerful.
Great.
A daily intention and mindfulness practice is making me feel more focused. I managed to build on my vision maybe 3 times a week, but I really want to make it a daily practice. I need more coins to put in all my bags. I've gotten the journaling done. I've usually done it twice a week, but I've started doing it before I go to bed. The vision prompts were fantastically helpful. I use mindfulness daily, but this has actually encouraged me to now do 2 sessions a day to improve my awareness even further.
Wow, good for you.
I've been getting better at the personal visioning, not quite there yet. I did the mindfulness and focus meditation every day, and I really like it. It's my happy place every morning right after getting up.
Wonderful.
Great. Lots of really great comments coming in, and I'll touch on one more. I've been journaling mostly every day, and when I started this, I didn't really have a vision of what I wanted to be accomplishing in 2020. But during the wee hours of Saturday morning, my vision became really clear, and my journaling now has new meaning and purpose. I've started the groundwork of what I see myself doing in 2020 and how. Also loving my mindfulness practices. Apart from feeling calmer, I also feel more empowered. Some wonderful feedback. Great.
Absolutely. And what I would encourage, and the reason this is not self-aggrandizement, it's not for me that I'd like to share those out, just for those of you who may not have yet got the time to invest into this and really dive into it, just listen to what are happening with other folks. And I hope that helps, gives just some encouragement for you to put that little bit more time in. And to the folks that shared, thank you very, very much. Other comments or questions there, Eva?
Yeah, Rachel shared that she purchased the Coaching with Compassion book recommended in the last session, and even having it on her coffee table has generated loads of discussions with people.
Wow, great. It's a great book, great read. Yeah.
Self-compassion sort of felt like it has entered my body through my hand and sort of found its root now.
Yeah.
Through one of the sessions. And then we had a lot of great comments coming in about what everyone was individually grateful for. A few people said, for you, Deiric, very grateful for offering
You're grateful for your gratitude. Yeah.
And then I did have a couple of questions. I'm just wary of the time. So, okay, we had one question in, if my company doesn't do any work on any form of self-awareness, where should we start? Do you have coaches? Do you have coaches? I'm not sure about the end of that sentence, but would you have recommendations for where to start if a company's not even looking at self-awareness in the organization?
Yeah, and that's something, I mean, it's something I won't dive into in these sessions, but happy to continue that dialogue with anybody. I mean, bottom line is we have certified practitioners who can take these sessions and everything else that we do and take them into their organizations, or if you're a coach, consultant, trainer, take them into your clients. So happy to provide you some information about how we do that and how our certified practitioners do that and how to build that into either what you do in your organization or what you do with your clients. But I'll take that out of this session. Please reach out to Aoife or reach out to myself, and we'll give you all the information you need. But bottom line is, you can take any of this stuff. If you're a certified practitioner, we give you everything that we create so that you can bring this stuff in-house, and we tell you.
Perfect. Thank you, Deiric. Can I share this recorded program, or is it available with my colleagues after the fact?
Yeah, indeed. We with all of the programs, we're going. Who was that? What was the name? Doesn't matter. If you didn't catch it, it's okay. But bottom line is, we'll make this a self-paced program. So Aoife has already started for people who are joined late. When people sign up today, they get 1, 2, and after today, they get session 3. When we finish the full program, we'll set it up so that anybody signing up can engage with it as if it was live. So it'll be fed to them once weekly, over a period of 4 weeks with all of the same mailers, all of the same stuff that we shared with you. So absolutely, yes. You know, anybody you think will benefit from it, send them along to it. Yeah.
Perfect. Okay. Thank you, Derek. And then we did have a question coming on recommended reading. I know we're going to share some material in the follow-up, and then as we wrap up the course as well, we'll compile some of the different research pieces for you.
Yeah, for sure.
And that as well.
Ava, just remind me about that afterwards, because what I'll do is I'll put up a recommended reading list next week. Definitely, if you are responsible in any way, and that means a parent, a manager, a coach, a consultant, in any way for helping people to figure out where they're going, Boyatz's book is it's a great piece of work. It's very practical. I like it. But I'll share several others with you. You know, if you're interested in neuroscience, I'll share those. You're interested in emotional intelligence, I share those, because we're weaving in and out. Everything you're doing in this session is about building your emotional intelligence and your mindfulness. And I saw during the week that Aoife had a nice image up on social media that which I thought was really nice, by the way. Aoife, I haven't got to say it to you. It had a waterfall on it, folks, if you haven't seen. And it said, mindfulness is emotional intelligence in action. And what you're developing is self-awareness, which is mindfulness. And the more self-awareness you get, the more you're demonstrating emotional intelligence, whether you're aware of it or not. So interesting. But yeah, we make sure we put up a list of books.
And that is a good reminder, Derek, sorry, to make sure that you all join our LinkedIn group. When we started running these programs, we invited everyone to come together so they could share their experience, their journey in developing mindfulness and emotional intelligence. And now there's over, I think, 800 people in that group.
Yeah.
So we share all of those snippets out there and research articles. So I'll make sure that link is included again in the follow-up email.
Very good. Very good. Yeah. There was something struck me, and I have such a bad memory. I just want to dive on one final thing. For the person who said, I can feel the self-compassion flow from my hands into my body and down through me. Let me just say to everybody, and those of you listening on the recording as well, once you've done that practice a few times and you've seen how quickly it can be, you don't necessarily even need the words. Just the act. Once you've gone through that and it's become something that you're familiar with, you can just, in times of difficulty, just bring your hand to your heart, place it on there, become aware of it, and you get the same response. You get that same sort of calming response. It's almost like your mom reaching out and putting her hand on your head or your chest or whatever when you were a youngster, just to calm you, and it has that same effect. And it's physiological. It is a chemical oxytocin that's released. So I just wanted to say to you, whomever said that, and to everybody else, just putting your hand on your heart can trigger that response.
Perfect.
Okay.
Okay. Other than that, Derek, we just had a lot of thank yous coming in. This is really helpful, especially the gratitude and self-compassion. Someone shared this. I think it's Sandy. This is golden.
Okay.
Well, but yeah, lots of thank yous, Derek, for a great session.
Good. That's really gratifying. Really, that gives me something to be grateful for today when it comes to the end of the day and as I work through the day. So thank you for that. For the folks who stayed on, I see there is still some. Thank you very much. We committed to 60 minutes, and sometimes it's difficult to keep to that. You had a choice. We were pretty much finished. I really appreciate you staying on. To people who are on the recording, you know, you're very welcome. Well worth staying to this part, because I think just hearing what other people are experiencing can be much more compelling than what we might say. So December 4th, we'll see you. God, I held that off long enough. December 4th, we'll see you for the liftoff session, for the final session where we launch everything and take off into 2020. So in the meantime, thank you very much. Thanks for your very kind feedback, and we'll see you again next time. Take care.
Take care, folks. Bye.
Bye-bye.